As those faithful watchers of the planning board will see that I, Andrew Mills, kicked off the meeting as the vice chair. Unfortunately, our astute and esteemed chairman was not feeling well this evening and asked if I would fill in for him today. So with that said, also Jesse was unable to attend. We still have a quorum with Mimi, myself, and Ms. Houlihan. So we will proceed with the first item, which is the discussion for the master plan committee. Mimi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The master plan committee will next be meeting on April 7th, which is a week from Wednesday, and we're diligently working individually on updating the chapters, and Julie Connolly and Judith Watson have volunteered to do the final editing, so all the formatting and everything is the same. Hopefully soon I will be posting on the planning board Dropbox all of the goals and recommendations, just to get the input from the planning board to make sure that we're on the right track. We haven't forgotten anything or something. We don't have a goal that the planning board is not in favor of. So look for that coming to the Dropbox soon, and hopefully we'll discuss it in more depth at the next meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And that next meeting we have currently scheduled is April 12th, in case anyone participating remotely is interested. So the next item, we have the public hearings for 96 Mount Victory Road, definitive subdivision plan approval, and also the lower impact development special permit for 96 Mount Victory Road. Karina, you want to bring us an update on this one?
Yes, because we have two planning board members not available this evening, and you typically have recused yourself from these public hearings. We only have two planning board members. So I spoke with the proponent, Michael Bartolini Properties, and he agreed that it would be best if the public hearing for the subdivision as well as for the special permit for lower impact development be continued without planning board discussion to the April 12th, 2021 planning board meeting. So
Okay.
that's their request, or they agreed. It's a consensus that would be the best.
Great. So hearing that there would be no discussion or anything, we just and I believe he's not even attending this evening, or his counsel. So
That's correct. And we have, it's 7:05, 7:06 now. So both those public hearings were scheduled to start at 7:05. So you're good to go to make a motion.
So this would be the point in the meeting. We entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for 96 Mount Victory Road definitive subdivision plan approval until April 12th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion that's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing that, all in favor? Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Great. So now we'd be at the point where we entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for a 96 Mount Victory Road lower impact development special permit to April 12th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, then we'll go to vote. Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Great. So those two have moved and continue to April 12th. Next item on the agenda is public hearing, annual town meeting, article amend section 174-10 site plan approval. Karina, you want to bring us up to speed on that one?
Sure can. So at the last public hearing on March 8th, Andrew Dennington had posed a question and concern regarding constructive approval being stricken from the minor site plan section and of the site plan approval bylaw draft that's proposed. And I was tasked, planning was tasked to get a legal opinion from town council. Not a legal opinion, but we submitted a legal opinion request asking for further clarification and reasoning why.
Karina, hold on, I just realized it's not 7:15 yet.
Oh, you're right. Let's hold. You're right. Sorry, it's kind of fast.
So due to the scheduling, I think would be best if we move on. We could do other business before the board, so the planners report.
Get a couple of these things out. So one of the things I wanted to point out is we received a notice of public hearing from the town of Westborough for a project that is in Westborough, and it's at 4,400 Computer Drive. I just thought this was an interesting project, being relatively close to Southborough. It's a 221,256 plus or minus square foot building with parking, loading facilities, infrastructure for a last mile e-commerce fulfillment center on Computer Drive. So they advertise that there'll be a public hearing for planning board. Trying to see what day it is. You can find that on Westborough's town website, but I just wanted to point that out to the planning board members that that was a big project for Westborough coming in.
Karina, where is that 4,400?
It's west of 495.
Oh, it's on the right-hand side, like near the hotel and stuff. Is that 4,400?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that's where it is. It's in the industrial zoning district and industrial just overlay district with small individual portions. I'm trying to see exactly. I looked at it on the mapping. I just can't recall. I just know that it's on the west side of 495. It doesn't abut Southborough property either.
Okay.
But we get a notice like this because when you have a public hearing, you have to notify all abutting towns that you have one. But if anyone's interested, you just give me a call and I can email you a copy of that if you want.
What type of fulfillment center is it going to be?
It's an e-commerce. It's called for a quote last mile e-commerce for fulfillment center. And it doesn't give you a description of what that means in this advertisement, but it does say that you can get information from the planning department in Westborough, and they have a Zoom meeting set up just like this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Also, probably residents in town must notice that the work has started on the Mass DOT accelerate bridges from the turnpike. You'll see in the mornings, it jams up traffic a little bit, but they're doing pretty good keeping it going. It's only tough when it's one way in each direction. So those are at Corderville Road, Woodland Road, and Parkerville Road. And if you're in Westborough, it's at Flanders Road as well. Those 4 bridges are being worked on. Then, let's see what else. I never get to do this, so this is great. Elections are coming up. The annual town meeting has been set to May 22nd. And the annual town election will be May 11th. And I believe Mimi is running for her seat again for planning board.
Yay.
Not showing favorites or anything, but
Mhm. And if you want more information on positions and elected spaces, you can go to the town clerk's website, and there's more information there. Just want to let you know that for 78 Turnpike Road, the LabCorp at Walgreens, I sent them a letter updating the planning board's determination there, and they also followed up with Board of Health information protocols and are in the process of getting a building permit right now. So that went well. Sarah has been working on a MAPC TAP DLTA grant application, which she submitted for a second phase for the housing production plan, which is a 5-year strategic plan for Shopsy, working with Affordable Housing Trust Funds and the committee there. So good job, Sarah.
Yeah, nice job, Sarah.
Thank you, thank you. I'm excited and hopeful that we'll get the award.
Yeah, it's great. And the person at MAPC her name's Karina as well. So it's always like, Karina said this. I'm like, oh, what? I didn't say that. The affordable home at 16B Stockwell Lane, the town is in the process of selling that. So they're in the real estate office's MCO Realty, and they've advertised that property. So it's a first come, first served basis. The person who submits full paperwork that's complete first has the first option to purchase. And that gets set through the DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. So that's ongoing. So you can find that information on the website too, if you're interested. All right, one more minute. The Board of Selectmen are seeking bids for the South Union School building to find out what can happen there. So I don't have a lot of detail on that, but it's interesting because that was one of the locations that Shopsy was looking at for potential affordable housing there. That Cimarano Drive in Marlborough. Remember a few months ago, we had an A&R where the majority of the land was in Marlborough, but there were some acres in Southborough, which were all wetland, and they separated those two parcels out. Well, they've been approved for 475 units. Let's see. I believe it's a housing project.
Wow.
475 units of housing has been bought by developers for more than 14 million. Construction is slated to start in the first half of the year, according to Rock Point Group, with first 2 of the 5 phases approving 475 units on 43 acres. So that's a big project over there. And I think we have an IT person that will be joining Southborough. Hopefully, the Board of Selectmen have asked somebody to start April 20th. So
Right.
once they start, I'll have more information on them. And we have an email from Mark Purple recently that will be coming more and more back to the office. So we can come back on Fridays now, based on, each department's need to schedule back in to townhouse. The townhouse is still closed to public unless you have an appointment or make plans ahead. But we do have a doorbell at the front door now. So when people show up and you can't reach anyone necessarily by cell phone, you can ring the doorbell. Someone always comes to help you out. And that's what I have.
Technically, it's the back door, isn't it, Karina?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, the back door, where the parking lot is. To me, that's the front door, but that's the back door. Yeah.
All right. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you. So now I do see we're past 7:15, so we can start the discussion of the annual town meeting warrant article, amend section 174-10 site plan approval. And Karina, I think you were in the midst of, if you can start over again with that update, since we're now at our time, that'd be great.
I will. Okay, at the last planning board public hearing on March 8th, Andrew Dennington attended and had a question regarding constructive approval language being stricken from a section of the proposed bylaw changes for site plan approval. So planning asked town council to further clarify his recommendation to strike that constructive approval. And town council provided an opinion today regarding that. He still stands by his recommendation. And some of the reasons for that is that, and I'll try and explain it here. Either that or I could read his letter if you'd like to hear excerpts of it. But basically, let's see what it says here. They have a belief that a constructive approval or grant provision in the site plan review process is not favorable to the planning board. Although such constructive grant language is contained in Chapter 40A relative to other zoning relief, the case law challenges to the process have been significant over the years. And there's two concerns. If a constructive grant occurred, even with the best efforts of the planning board, it could result in a legal effect of approving an incomplete plan without sufficient conditions or terms, which could be adverse to the public interest. So site plans usually are not denied, they're conditioned. But if a site plan application is not complete and information is not provided to complete that, then the planning board, as you have seen in the past, doesn't reject. I think it's still a denial, but if the proponent doesn't agree, then it could be misconstrued that they go on their merry way and consider it a constructive approval. Whereas what we do right now, we're already doing some of the things that Aldo recommends, and that's when we get close to the deadline for planning board action, the proponent requests a continuation to a public hearing and also for the planning board action deadline. And that seems to work well. And then the planning board grants that extension. So if you're in a site plan that's 60 days, the planning board can move beyond that action deadline with a request granting the applicant the request to extend that. And that seems to have worked well because planning tries to stay on top of that. So we're pretty conscientious of the deadlines and we track those. So it reduces that risk. And, also given the nature of the existing case law, an applicant could attempt to manipulate the process of review that nearly traps the planning board into an unanticipated constructive grant. It's much preferred that there be sufficient time identified in the bylaw for review with traditional understanding that additional agreed upon extensions would be available. So you can also change the bylaw to extend that 60 days, but the 60 days seems to work for the most part. And we do use extensions, whether it's a couple at the end. So again, town council said he hopes that this further addresses his opinion that was provided back in February of 2020. But we have the same strong legal concern as to constructive grant of site plan approval as we historically did, with the lack of need for use variances, which should have been deleted decades ago so as not to create unwanted development issues in the town. So he continues to recommend that constructive approval taken out of the bylaw is a better path for the planning board to avoid these loopholes of missed deadlines. And we address that as the planning department. We have 2 staff members who stay on top of that. So I know that was one long sentence. Sorry.
Oh, that was a great update. Thank you.
All right.
Any comments, questions on this one? Yeah, maybe.
I just have a quick question. Karina, is it the standard practice of the planning department to notify the applicant, the board of selectmen, and the building inspector in writing on the outcome of a site plan?
Yes, what we typically do is when an application is submitted, all the departments are given an email of the submissions each time. From the original all the way to the last. There's still 3 departments that get full-size hard copies as well. And then at the end, I'll have to follow up, but they're aware of the process.
Okay.
We don't necessarily then follow up with each department with the decision. But then when they go for the building permit, every department has to sign off, whether it's planning, assessor, tax, the treasurer. And it's in that software that we use that everybody sees. We upload our decision into that software for the building department. And each department uploads the important information they have, and the applicant uploads all his documentation too. So there's a electronic copy of everything.
Clearinghouse and
Yeah,
everyone can see
clearinghouse.
it there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right? Any other questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public?
I don't see any hands raised at the moment. We have 6 attendees.
All right.
No.
So then at this time, I guess we'd look for, Karina, I'm gonna change the timeline on these a little bit.
Okay.
I guess you want to keep it still the same times for the next meeting? 7:15, 7:20, 7:25 as we go through these?
Well, that would be helpful if,
Okay.
unless you see there's a problem with that.
No, I just wonder if next time we don't have any updates on this one at all, but we'll probably be way past 7:15 after talking about Mount Vickery, so.
Right, because we'll have the draft decisions and conditions to review. Go well,
Okay.
it'll go at least.
So at this point, we look to have I'm having a senior moment. Make a motion for annual town meeting warrant article, amend section 174-10 site plan approval to April 12th, 2021 at 7:15 PM.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion that's been seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Great. So next item on the agenda, and it is past 7:20, so we have annual town meeting warrant article, amend section 174-9 special permit requirements, 174-19 extensions and all alterations. Karina.
All right, this one is a little bit briefer. At the last planning board public hearing on March 8th, there were no questions, no public comments. The public hearing was continued to this evening, March 29th. And here we are. Unless somebody has anything to add.
All right. Any updates, comments from the board? Any questions, comments from the public? If you
I
have,
do not see any hands raised. We still have the same 6 attendees.
okay. So then I guess at this point, we would look for a motion to extend the public hearing for annual town meeting warrant article, amend section 174-9 special permit requirements and 174-19 extensions and alterations to April 12th, 2021 at 7:20 PM.
So moved.
Second.
So motions been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, take a vote. Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Excellent. And we are past 7:25. So the next one is the public hearing for annual town meeting warrant article. Update section 174-12.1 outdoor illumination. This has been continued from 2/22 and 3/8, same as the other ones. Karina, any update on this one?
This is pretty brief one as well from the March 8th Planning Board Public Hearing number 2. We discussed the enforcement issue and the burden of proof on the complainant. There was discussion about bringing Board of Selectmen's attention to the Building Commissioner's enforcement approach or ability, or how they would like to handle that. Still not clear how we'll convey that information, but the public, as part of the public hearings, we submitted copies of the warrant articles to the department, similar when we get an application for site plan or subdivision. So the draft warrant articles were distributed to the departments, so they are aware that the public hearings are taking place. So if someone has comments or concerns, they can attend these hearings. They're also posted on the planning board website. So that brings us here to March 29th. And there weren't any other questions or follow-up from the last meeting.
Yeah, the subcommittee was unable to meet and address those. So I think that was the plan, is that we would meet, not subcommittee, but the crew that's trying to write the language,
Working group.
the working group. And so once we can do that, I do have a question just in general, Karina. When are the actual final draft warrants due for print?
Shortly after the April 12th public hearing.
Okay.
Planning board public hearing. Initially, it was April 20th, but I think the time frame, when I spoke with the town administrator, he asked us, what our public hearing schedule was. And I said, well, we're having one April 12th, which is the closest before past the deadline. So I told him that, whatever is done at that point is what will get formatted and submitted. So the other thing is that, the actual document in Word has to be formatted to match the outline in the current code. So none of the text, the context will change, but we'll just indent where we're supposed to before we send it to the town administrator's office for including in the final warrant to go to printer. So right after April 12th, sometime that week.
So we'll have a plan to then the working group will get that final draft to the planning board in order to meet that meeting.
I have a question or request for clarification. At the Board of Selectmen's meeting, they did discuss briefly the warrant articles, and the concern was raised about this one on enforcement. And it's my understanding that it hasn't really changed from our current bylaw. We've updated the lighting levels based on recent scientific knowledge, but the basis of the bylaw is pretty much the same. Am I correct on that?
That's actually our understanding, and that's been confirmed by town council in 2 separate communications to us.
Okay, so there was a fear that, suddenly people were going to be telling on their neighbors and there was going to be all these lighting disputes all over town, but it's not changed. It hasn't happened since whenever this bylaw went into effect in the 80s or whenever. So I don't know why this would be any big change. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the board? Any questions from the public about the lighting bylaw change?
I do not see any hands raised at the moment. We do have a few new attendees. We're at 9 attendees at the moment.
Great. All right, therefore, at this time, we'd be entertaining a motion to look to continue the public hearing for annual town meeting warrant article update section 174-12.1 outdoor illumination continue to April 12th, 2021 at 7:25 PM.
So move.
Second.
Motions made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. We'll go to a vote. Mills, yes.
Latrell, yeah.
Houlihan, yes.
Great. I do see it is after 7:30, so the next public hearing is annual town meeting warrant article, create section 174-8.4.1 downtown district. Karina, you want to give us an update on this one, please?
Sure, I'm gonna start and then if Sarah has anything to supplement, I'll give her a chance to talk. She's been heavily involved with this one. So at the last public hearing on March 8th, there were a couple of tasks. Planning department had prepared had done some research on the zoning map history and the business village district in the downtown area and its boundary limits and where they originated from. So Sarah compiled information and that was provided to the EDC and the Board of Selectmen for their continued efforts with the downtown district bylaw that they're working on. I contacted Lori Lavoli and asked her about the term establishment, which is used in the downtown district's proposed bylaw language, and to get an understanding if building code had any kind of definition for that. And there is no specific term in the building code for establishment, but the building commissioner felt that it represented a business. And I believe that in the code, it may be under the parking part of the zoning code, there is a reference to, or in the sign bylaw, it's actually in the sign bylaw, there is a definition that includes the term establishment. So, the EDC and the Board of Selectmen should note that coordination, similar to the term facade that we talked about, if the definition's used somewhere else in the bylaw, they should just make sure there's no conflict with that and try to use the same definitions. Let's see, on March 16th, the Board of Selectmen met and they had a brief discussion towards the end of their meeting where Lisa Braccio outlined the status of the project they're working on and requested that they have a public forum, a second one on March 30th, which is tomorrow. So they agreed to have a second public forum at 6:30 tomorrow with the Board of Selectmen, which they posted an agenda for. Then on March 19th, the planning department received an updated draft downtown district warrant article document dated March 9th, 2021, which is called version 8, I believe, which Sarah and I both read through and discussed at length, and we provided some comments on that in a document for the planning board to look at based on the prior discussions of comments that the planning board members had. So you can see that if you need to. And that brings us to this evening. Planning board's public hearing number 3 for the downtown district bylaw proposed by the EDC, currently being supported by the Board of Selectmen, or at least vetted by the Board of Selectmen. So that's where we are.
Thank you. And just for clarification too, that those documents you mentioned, the updated plans and everything are on the website, correct?
The updated draft warrant articles on the planning board website under news and announcements for public public hearing this evening, as well as the draft design guidelines from the previous meeting.
Great. And I think the items most critical or things that I've been looking for, the square footage of the buildings, there has been no change since we started the public hearings, correct?
Yeah, it's my understanding that it's, there's still the threshold is 3,000 square feet per establishment, which is the threshold for a special permit for the uses described, different from 2,000 square feet in the business village district currently, which is the threshold.
Granny, you're fading in and out just a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm too far away. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Sit up.
So there has not been a change to the square footage of the buildings from 3,000 down, okay, in the current proposal. And the other piece too was the map itself for the business district. There still has been no change to that at this point, correct?
Correct, and I'll let Sarah speak to that. She has some additional information.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there isn't currently any recommendations for changing those boundaries at this point. However, you know, that historical research in looking at, you know, this district, which was established in way back 1955, in its kind of evolution, there have been points during town meeting where they have verified those boundaries, all, you know, with an update of the actual district. So that is something that's an option. If, you know, the EDC or the Board of Selectmen really feel strongly about, you know, trying to speak with the owners affected, you know, in that area to kind of update it, you know, in the same warrant article for this year.
I also want to just quickly point out, Andrew, Mimi, that Sarah received an email from Dan Bailey, who wanted to speak briefly this evening on behalf of his client, Kristen Connell, who owns 15 Main Street.
I do see his hand raised. Happy to get to that once we get through questions for the members of the planning board.
Okay, and also I was copied on an email from Bonnie Faniff, who submitted a list of comments and questions to the Board of Selectmen regarding the presentation that was provided at the last public forum. The EDC had presented a PowerPoint PDF with different aspects of their goals for the downtown district. So Bonnie had provided her questions and comments in those, as well as a couple of questions to the Board of Selectmen on the downtown district warrant article language itself. So she'll probably be discussing that, or they will be at the public forum tomorrow.
Great. So any questions from the planning board? Mimi? Miss Luttrell, I should say, sorry.
So, a couple of things. This downtown revitalization has been marketed and promoted as a walkable, well-connected, small town Main Street. And revitalization of the downtown is supported in the current master plan that we're working on, the housing production plan, master plans going back. But the devil is in the details. What is being proposed is a dense urban development, not a small town Main Street development. In the new version, the 0.35 floor area ratio was thrown out, which when we started discussing that was a matter of a lot of debate, and consensus was finally reached at the 0.35, and that was thrown out for a 80% lot coverage. And what that would mean is that on a 5,000 square foot lot, which is the minimum lot size in the downtown, a 12,000 square foot building would be allowed by right. And to just give some perspective, the building that's on the corner of 85 and Southfield Road, the big yellow building, is a 10,000 square foot building on a 23,000 square foot lot. So any thought that an 80% lot coverage is, small town, small scale development is ludicrous in my opinion. Additionally, we had some questions at the last meeting about the mixed use and why there were no residential uses allowed. And that hasn't changed. There's been messing around with the definition, but still, it's still confusing in the bylaw, and confusion leads to litigation. So we want to be very clear with what we're doing. And also there were questions on the section 5 on the site plan, which was ambiguous, and it still remains ambiguous. Well, I think that's all I have for now. I think that what's being promoted is not what this bylaw is allowing. Thanks.
Yep. So Corinne and Sarah, did you guys get those points? We can feed that back to the EDC.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Houlihan, any comments?
No, I was going to make the same two of the same comments around. It's still very confusing in the way that they specify residential use by right or permitted use in the residential districts. So it's not very clear in that section. And then the other point that Ms. Luttrell just mentioned was the 0.35 FAR being out of the language now.
Great.
And I mean, just my other comment is I still believe that we should correct the zoning issues at the heart of this before trying to band-aid any zoning, uses before we understand what the zoning map is.
I totally agree. That's why I brought that up to begin with. That those two critical items I think need to be addressed before we go any further. But so those are my main concerns, along with what
The third issue is wastewater, which that lot that they were thinking of, the town was going to put on the warrant to purchase, supposedly maybe for a small wastewater system, is not going to be on the warrant that was removed at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. So we're nowhere on wastewater.
Yeah, agreed. I think Ms. Fanath brought that up in her letter to us and the selectmen as well, from what I recall. All right. So if no other questions, comments from the board, I think I'll open up to the public. I do see.
Well, Andrew, just real quick, and I wanted to kind of reiterate, kind of piggyback onto what Mimi had said. Under the permitted uses by special permit from the planning board, where it indicates mixed use development that includes a use requiring a special permit under this section. I thought also that, to avoid a special permit, developers could put in only one residential unit with also under 3,000 square foot establishments, more than one. So you could have 3,000 square foot, coffee shop or ice cream shop. You could have a 3,000 square foot barber shop and one residential unit, and it would be by right. So there wouldn't be, you could really build based on especially the 80% coverage. I mean, you could have a pretty substantial development without, the needed vetting by a town board or committee prior to building permit. So I feel that's important too, that, the intent of the BV district many years ago, I believe, in speaking with town council and others, the history was that, this is supposed to be controlled in the way that the people want it to be for a historic downtown area. And that's done through, planning boards who are elected officials who then vet these projects in the best interest of, the town and the people who live in that area as well. So just my 2 cents.
Well stated. Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Any other comments from the board or staff? Seeing none, I do know Dan Bailey's had his hand raised for a while, so let's open up to him.
Dan, you should be all set.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes,
Good
sir.
evening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I guess it's Vice Chairman. My name's Dan Bailey. I am a land use lawyer in the Boston office of Pierce Atwood LLP. I've been asked by my client, Kristen Connell, who owns 15 Main Street, to speak to you tonight about your proposed bylaw. Kristen is watching, as is her sister, Karen Connell, who lives at 15 Main Street. So, I've sent you a letter. I won't belabor it too much, but what we are requesting is that the board consider including 15 Main Street in the proposed downtown district. We feel that it fits well within the downtown district, and it's consistent with the historic and mixed use purposes that you're trying to achieve. I do want to say, this is the first thing, I just got involved in this a week ago. I know you've been at this for a long time. I hear the concerns and questions that are typical of this process coming out. My client is looking for some flexibility in mixed use. They've got a very large lot. It's 1.4 acres. And I heard the comments of the planning board members regarding the potential for dense development. That's not why we're here. I didn't even think about that until I heard the concerns raised. We're just looking for the ability. I mean, we feel like should be part of that district. It's the only single family residence on the north side of Main Street for several hundred feet. It's abutted on either side, to the west by St. Mark's and to the east by a commercial use, where there's a daycare and some other commercial uses. That commercial use was actually used to be part of 15 Main Street. The commercial use is at 11 Main Street, and it was divided out probably via an A&R plan 30 or 40 years ago. And when it was divided out, it maintained an easement on the 15 Main Street property for its leach field. And then underneath that, on top of that leach field, there's a playground for the daycare that's in the commercial building. So it's already kind of intertwined with 11 Main Street. Again, we would like the ability to do some mixed use. I will point out that 15 Main Street is a historic property. In fact, it is specifically identified in the proposed, I had this in the downtown business village district. There's a list of the historic properties, and it's the first one on the list, 15 Main Street. And it's known as the Moses Newton House. So I would just summarize by saying that including this property meets 3 of the design guideline goals that are talked about in the design guidelines, which are to restore and protect the historic character enhance downtown Southborough as a commercial area and reinforce downtown as a civic place. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Any questions from the board?
Dan indicated that he submitted a letter. Are you referring to the email, Dan, that you sent Sarah?
I sent a letter dated March 23rd, I think it was, 24th, to Donald Morris, the chair, by email.
Through the planning department?
I believe so.
So it was just you directly to Don Morris's email from the website?
Yes, I mean, my assistant did it. So I assume that's where she sent it. I can resend it.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you could copy me at.
I know you have Sarah's email from the website.
Yeah, that would
I
be good.
received your email today, so if you just want to forward that original one,
I'll
that would
send
be
it to you. I apologize for that. But
no, that's okay. No worries. Thanks.
So Dan, I appreciate your comment. Just wondering, I know that there's been an initiative numerous times to try to get a historic designation for the downtown area. I see Ray Holkelson on the webinar as well, that he was part of that. I'm just curious, is that something that your clients are looking to participate in for that area too, or just looking to be part of the business village for that location?
I don't know the answer. I mean, I can certainly ask them. Right now, it's the business village, but if there's overlap with the historic district, we can certainly talk about that. We know the property's historic, and I know that my clients are working with an architect for building renovations that would preserve the facade.
Okay. And I also asked selfishly because I'm the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee.
Okay.
Committee for the town. So they're always looking for, new opportunities to preserve historic areas within the town. So thank you. I think next we had, if there weren't any other questions for Dan, I know Kevin's had his hand up. Kevin Miller. And I see Ray Holkelson, but I think Kevin was first. So let's go with Kevin.
Kevin, you should be all set.
Hi there. Thank you for the recognition. I find myself again greatly.
So Kevin, can you just state your location where you live, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm at 18 Ladisquama.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say that I again find myself appreciating the members of the planning board for appearing to understand so much better than I'm finding in other forums in town, that the EDC's downtown initiative has got more holes in it than Swiss cheese. And I quite agree with Ms. Luttrell's remark that the devil is in the details, although I think Ms. Luttrell would agree with me that matters of density and wastewater are hardly minor ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the most bedeviling detail of all, I think, is well known at this point, from my perspective, is the map. And I had some questions for the planning board regarding jurisdiction, and this would really be helpful in clarifying things for me, and I think for other members of the town who haven't been as deeply involved in government until this point and who are contemplating their vote at town meeting. In terms of what I'm trying to get at is who has the jurisdiction here with regard to the map. I don't know if you folks, busy as you are, have the time or the inclination, for instance, to watch the recordings of the EDC meetings. But the EDC has been quite consistent in denying all responsibility for the map whatsoever. Now, in the last planning board meeting of March 8th, I thought it was quite clear that you gave instructions to Julie Connolly and the EDC that they had better look at the map and address the obvious glaring problems that exist within the current map. And I can tell you, because I was present at the call of the EDC on the 12th of March and on the 25th, that they quite deny that they have any responsibility for the map. Quote, I don't think it's the EDC's job to take up the map. They don't think the planning board understands the zoning process at all. They were quite explicit about that. And I don't want to stir up trouble between boards and committees, but I invite members of the planning board to go review that call of March 12th. You guys won't be pleased. It was pretty unfortunate, but they don't think that you know what you're doing, and they simultaneously blame you for the mapping issue. They don't intend to take any responsibility for it. They voted on March 12th to advance their proposal with this ridiculous contingency that the map should be revisited later. However, they declined to take a vote on when that should occur. They ratified those meeting minutes at their last meeting. So now their official position is the map's a problem, but it's not our problem. And so they're kicking it back to you as a kind of hot potato. And I know, I'm sorry Mr. Morris isn't here tonight, because I know he was trying to navigate some very treacherous shoals on your last meeting, where, that this was a proposal that was coming through the EDC, but it wasn't really belonging to the planning board. And so what I'm looking for is some clarity. Who is responsible? Who's going to take ownership of the map? I can tell you again, I'm sorry if I'm the bearer of bad news, but the EDC says it's your fault and it's your problem, and it's up to you to do something about it, because they don't want any part of it. And you know why, of course, because time's running out on the shot clock here, and they're not going to be able to get it off in time. They're not going to be able to fix the problems with the map. And so they're going to blame you. They're an appointed board, you're elected officials. So, they put you in a bad spot here. But I would just like some clarity from members of the planning board, how you respond. And it's on record of what their position is, that it's not their job to fix it, it's yours. But I'm unclear because, at your last meeting, it seemed like you were telling them to fix it, and they're saying they don't want to do it. And so I just don't know, as a humble citizen here, I don't know where to turn. Like, who am I supposed to be complaining? I've made it clear that I got big problems with the map, but I don't know who to ask, because no one wants to sort of take ownership of it. So I hope I was clear on that. And honestly, I'm very appreciative of the planning board, because, you folks have made it clear that you get it and you see the problems here. And I know you're in a tough spot, but what do you advise? Who's responsible for the map?
Great question, Kevin. Thanks for bringing it up. And I agree with you. I think in our last meeting, I was under the clear impression that the request was for the EDC to look at the map and come back with a recommendation for what they think the map should look like. And so that was my understanding, and why I kind of kicked off the meeting, wondering if there was any update to what the map would be.
Well, like I said, I'm maybe telling you something you already know.
No.
But their vote on the 12th was to proceed without a change to the map, and with a contingency. That's the official vote, that we're going to bring it forward with a contingency that the map should be revisited later. And I said to them in their last call, it's a kind of preposterous position for them to take. Nobody buys a property with a contingency attached that says, well, we'll determine the boundaries of the land you're going to own later. It's just, and coupled with all this by right stuff, it's just such an absurd situation. And I really do feel badly for the planning board, because I think you're caught between a rock and a hard place, being the Board of Selectmen and the EDC. And that somebody, again, I don't want to tell you folks how to do your job, but I would say, in spite of the difficulty of doing so, at some point, I think the planning board needs to take a formal vote and say what you really think about this proposal and how shaky it is. And I understand that that's going to be difficult, but I think it's necessary, and I think it's on. It's really well within your purview to let your feelings be known. And I think if you do so, I think you'll find that there's a lot of support. And again, I say this as someone who, from the very beginning, has also made clear that I support some improvements to the downtown on Main Street. I want to see a little more life brought to bear on Main Street, but not a quarter of a mile away, and not as part of this immense land grab and the motives that have not been acknowledged but are clearly present if you watch enough of these meetings. Again, this is a bad proposal, and I think this board understands that. And I express my appreciation, but I think you've got to do the hard thing at some point and take a vote.
And Kevin, I think that would definitely be something that will happen in the future. At this point, we're trying to. The whole point of the public hearings is to get input from the residents and even the owners of the properties, right, that's going to be affected, right, and try to come up with that common ground for what everyone is looking for.
Right, understood and appreciated. Again, I'm just, part of this is my frustration, where the map is so problematic, and as I watch these different meetings, I watch the ball being kicked back and forth. It really is a game of hot potato. Nobody wants to take ownership of the map because everybody knows now that they got a big problem with it, and the clock is running out, and they want to be able to declare victory at town meeting. Well, it can't happen. It's wrong in so many ways, as I think you guys understand completely. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah. One thing too, Kevin, I think tomorrow at the selectmen's meeting would be a good point to bring that up too. The same, voice your same concerns you had tonight. So
no worries about that.
I'm sure.
Andrew, I have 2 points. If I may. Kevin, at the prior meeting, you said 17 La Esquama. This evening, you're saying 18 La Esquama. Can you just confirm?
No, I'm sorry, I'm at 18.
18, okay, because
Yes.
I had 17 La Esquama.
Sorry.
And I think it's my understanding that when any changes to the zoning map, whether it's
Karina, can you get closer to the mic, please?
any changes to a zoning map, whether it's an overlay or boundary changes, etc., has to be approved at town meeting, which then ultimately gets vetted by the Attorney General's office to make sure that it's accurate. And I believe that's in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 4, as a reference. So Kevin, if you want to take a look at that, I'm going to revisit that myself over the next few days. But when somebody proposes a change to a district in a written bylaw, it would seem to make sense that it also follows that they have to present where that district is on the map and what the new name is, or if it has a new boundary. And that becomes part of the warrant article. It should be added to their warrant article language so that there is a vote taken at town meeting. I'm not sure you can just vote on the bylaw language of a zoning map change, which, even though you're holding the boundaries the same, you're naming it something different. Therefore, the zoning map has to reflect that. You now have, you would have a downtown district in downtown, but you still have the BV district in Southville and the other one along Route 9, Fayetteville, Southville. So you can't just say, here are the new rules and here's a new district and not have a map to go with it. So it's my understanding that the proponent who proposes a bylaw would also propose the zoning map change. Residents in the past come in, and if their property is at the edge of a zone, can come in and request that their property, the zone, the zoning district be rezoned to either include their lot or not. And then they would propose this change to the map as part of that petition. And then it would go through a planning board public hearing process with any kind of change to zoning, which then gets voted on at town meeting. So, it's my understanding that I see what you're saying, and it makes sense that the map goes along with a bylaw district. Change of name, change of boundary, etc. It needs to be addressed. They won't. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, I think I'm 100% in agreement with everything you just said. I think that at this point, my impression, and there are some EDC members on, and I'm sure they'll like to speak to this evening, is that they were intended, originally to superimpose this on the existing boundary. And so that is why they are not looking to change it at this point. And again, I'll let them speak for themselves. And because the existing boundary is, with some of these split lots and things, it is obviously raising concerns at this point. And I think that there is a need to shore up some of that. But, I think their position has been that this particular district, and that's why it was so important to kind of go and do the historical research to find out, kind of why it's this odd shape and how long has it been this odd shape. And it's for a long time now. And, I think it's definitely coming to a culmination that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, but even if you don't change the boundary, we can talk about this during the week or whatever, but you're changing the name and the criteria.
Yes.
And that has to be reflected on the.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. So whether or not you change the boundary, there still needs to be a different call out name and a different call out color for the zoning map. So if it has to be changed anyway, why wouldn't we look at assessing those boundary lines and shoring them up? I agree 100%.
And in fact, I believe it's a requirement by state statute. Thank you. That's all I have. You're muted, Andrew.
Sorry, any other comments on this one? Kevin, I appreciate your attendance and voicing your concerns and comments throughout this process. Thank you. So I know Ray's had his hand up. I think he's able to talk. Good evening, Mr. Holkelson. If you could just state yourself and your location where you live, that'd be great.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I'm Ray Hokinson. I live at 10 Main Street, corner of Main and Ladisquama. And I also own 12 Main Street, which wraps around my house entirely. Small frontage on Main Street, larger frontage on Ladisquama. The 15 Main Street request is the first time I've heard of it. So my response would be that we should think about it. But little background history on 15 Main Street, which 15 Main Street knows, but maybe the board doesn't or doesn't remember. Back when Harvard Health, whatever it was called, the medical center that's now around the corner on School Street or Newton Street, it used to be at 11 Main Street. And they pushed to try to take over 15 Main Street, incorporate that as part of their property. And it was fought by local Main Street people. And for the longest time, there were restrictive covenances on many houses along that block. because of that. It was the legal decision made. And eventually somebody convinced them to do the right thing, and they moved around the corner to a much better site. So they were trying to build what they have down on Newton Street, right there on Main Street. So these properties have had restrictive covenants for a long time. I'm pretty sure that those covenants have lapsed. But, you know, it was an issue that the residents did not want the business zone expanded. Recently, within the past couple years, 16 Main, the
You're fading out,
multi-family,
Ray.
yeah, what's that?
You're just fading out like I
Oh,
was.
sorry, maybe I'm turning away here. 16 Main Street, which is a residential property, they said, oh, well, gee, we're right next to the law office there, and that's a business zone. So we'd like to be a business zone too. And we spoke out against that, and that seems to have dissipated. So historically, we've tried to keep the residential properties residential and not, because what you will get, and what we've always feared, is sort of creeping zoning, that it starts here and then it just sort of slightly migrates. And the case that it's the only house on that side is not really true. Right next to it, 17 Main Street is a house, it is residential, and it belongs to St. Mark's. And across the street, Steve Phillips' old house, it's also owned by St. Mark's. St. Mark's owns a house on Ladisquama down by the golf course. It owns houses on school streets and 85s. They're all part of the residential zones. There's no sort of special exemption for St. Mark's district. Effectively, they're part of the residential districts. They own houses. So I think that particular argument doesn't hold water. So I'm just a little concerned. This is the first time I heard of it. So I just wanted to speak up about that, in that, you know, this issue has come up on several occasions in the past, and I don't think anybody else on the neighborhood has heard about it. So this is the first I've heard about it. I just wanted to speak on that. So that's my 15 Main Street comment. Regarding the Economic Development Committee's efforts in the downtown, I've tried to stay plugged in. I got out of it a bit because, like all of us, we just get tired of chasing town issues all the time. But I think, and I made notes mostly for tomorrow for the selectmen, but my concern about their approach is really an issue of balance for the town center. What they're proposing is really sort of a one-sided piecemeal effort to rezone the business district. And in such, it's just purely a zoning issue. And it doesn't seem to hold the issue of the septic issues, which is now off the warrant. I think the septic solution is critical, is part of that balance. A historic district is part of that balance, because one is development and the historic district is sort of a preservation effort. And it's really an issue of balance. And I'm concerned about just the one-sidedness of this proposal without really worrying about its impact on some of the other issues. My only final comment on the map is by that map, Ted's building, the old Ted's building, is a residence. That's pretty bizarre. If you look at the map, that their building is in the residential district and not in the business district. So it's a really screwed up map. I don't even know how it exists. And at the moment, that's my only comment, but I think I'm being dragged more and more into this issue. So you'll hear from me more.
So Ray, am I correct in hearing that you'd like to see added to this this warrant article something to do with historic preservation for downtown building?
I'd really like to see that, is whether that's part of the warrant article or whether it's part of a bigger package. I would like to, and I've actually approached the two historic commission members trying to sit there and say, okay, now here's leverage. It's got to be, here's a leverage for that, you can't do one without the other. And the historic district isn't that restrictive. It's not going to be very restrictive. It's not restrictive at all. It's just sort of an acknowledgement that it's part of the aspect of the town center. And it goes not only for the houses, but it also goes for many of the buildings themselves that are in the current business district.
And
So
the,
yes, I would like to see a more sort of cohesive approach. This EDC approach reflects one of my old nemesis is the ZAC committee, which had an approach that if you zone it, they will come. And it's just zoning takes care of everything. And the answer is, I'm concerned about that one-sidedness. Particularly with respect to Main Street. Main Street turned out to be a pretty good deal, Main Street reconstruction, but only after there was balance added. At one point it was all asphalt, and then the working group got involved, and then all of a sudden, okay, now we got a balance. And I think we're missing that balance right now in EDC's approach.
okay. Karina and Sarah, I just want to make sure you got the historic preservation piece down. Because I
did.
think that's the first we've heard of that.
Did make a note of that, and it is the first that I'm hearing.
Yeah. And
Also,
the-
it's being recorded, Andy.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure.
We got that. Yeah.
And then the septic piece, I think we talked about that before. I'm not sure if you were on, Ray, but we have been, that has been one thing that we've been discussing as we go through. So that's not getting lost with your comments. Okay, thank you, Ray, for participating, and I hope you feel good about getting sucked back into this. I see Julie's had her hand up. If we can bring
Yes.
Julie in.
And Julie is working, looks like with a older version of Zoom. So it says either choose promote to panelist to allow to talk. So I'm just gonna promote her a little further.
Good evening, Julie. You can just state your
Good evening, Julie Connolly, 26 Green Mill Road, and I didn't realize I was working with an older version of Zoom, so now I know. Thank you. Just, I don't have a lot to say, but just a couple of quick points. One, to respond to Ray about the historic preservation. That's certainly something, and Ray, I've always appreciated your comments. You said you'd step back for a little bit, but I do remember you being very active in some of the meetings that we had early on, and always giving some really good input. Historic preservation is certainly something that we've talked about throughout this. We're not looking to, we understand that the town is not looking to tear down buildings on Main Street and put up new things that don't sort of fit the scheme of what's already there. That's not what we envision. If you look at some of the renderings that we've had professionally prepared, I think, most people who see those are pretty comfortable with, that those are in line with what they're imagining for the downtown area. And obviously any historic buildings would still be subject to all the rules that are already in place to preserve historic buildings. So that's certainly not at all what we're looking to try to do, but I'm absolutely open to hearing about ways to, that people think we can ensure that more. That's certainly something that, we're aligned with, I believe. Sarah and Karina, you raised some interesting points on the map, and I'll actually be curious to hear more about that tomorrow when we have the forum and have our zoning attorney there, because he should know about that, because that certainly is something I'm interested to hear more about as far as what exactly to stick with the letter of the law needs to be done with the map. So I look forward to talking and hearing Adam's take on that as well. So that's about all. I look forward to the meeting tomorrow, and I am here if anyone has any specific questions as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the board for Julie? Mimi?
While I appreciate that, that Julie, you say that the vision for the downtown is those renderings and historic preservation. There's nothing in that bylaw that encourages historic preservation. And what's allowed in the bylaw is way more intense development than what is shown on those renderings.
I don't think it's more intense development that's shown on those renderings, but also, I think that one, obviously any historic buildings would be still subject to any rules, historic rules. So you can't just go tear down a historic building because you want to, it still has to follow the procedure and the protocols. And two, I think that's what, at least from my understanding, those are the kind of things that can be put in the design guidelines. We've talked a lot about separating the actual sort of nuts and bolts of the zoning bylaw, which is the numbers and the structure and how high and how wide and, how much green space and, just sort of like the metrics, we call it, versus the more, softer, I guess, the kind of the soft stuff, design, materials, what does it look like? And I think that would be, in my mind, that's where, some language about historic preservation would be a good fit. I'm open to hearing other items, but to me, that makes sense. That's more of a design guideline piece. So, I think that makes sense to me, at least.
Any other questions or comments for Julie?
Julie, will Judy Barrett and Adam Costa be at the forum tomorrow?
I'm not sure if Judy's available. She was going to try to be, but I don't have confirmation yet, but Adam will be there. And I know that Lisa has been in contact with both Judy and Adam very regularly. So, to the extent they're not there, I think she'll be able to have, some of the answers to questions.
Can I just ask one more question? I saw the agenda was posted for the public forum. Were there any other means of advertising for that forum? Was it on the banner on the website or anything?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I was just curious because the first forum was very well announced, and that's where I saw it all. I didn't realize there was a forum tomorrow until I saw the Board of Selectmen's agenda.
Yeah, it's being put on by the Board of Selectmen. I of course intend to be there, but this is, I don't think we're, I'm not presenting or anything. This is sort of their opportunity to, from what I understand, they just wanted to be able to take questions with Adam there and be able to answer them.
Right. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? I don't see any hands raised.
Sarah, can you just quickly read down the list so we have the names for Kate Battles for reference of attendees?
Okay. Andrew Dennington, Beth, Brian Morrison, Claire Reynolds, Dan Bailey, Kev Connell, Kevin Miller, Kristen Connell, Marcy Jones, Marika Munsif, Office, Ray Holkinson, Ryan O'Toole, and Tim Litt.
All right, thanks. I just know that helps her because she can't see that in the recording in case she needs to reference.
Great. So at this point, I'd look to entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for annual town meeting warrant article create section 174-8.4.1 downtown district for April 12th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Great. Next item on today's agenda is discussion for 120 Turnpike Road, minor site plan approval for Everybody Balance Yoga Studio. Karina,
Yes. Hold on, I'm just getting my.
we missed you. Where
I
did you
don't
go?
have
Oh, there you go.
I have to use my floor a little bit. I'm at the edge of my table. Okay. Let me just update you here.
Thought you ran off.
Here. Sarah, Brian Morrison is in the attendees, and he is the vice president and director of Everybody Balance Corporation, which is the yoga facility.
Yes.
Representing the applicant, Susan Endman, who's the owner and president of Everybody Balance Corp. Okay, so to get you updated, on March 4th, we received an application. Actually, we received a submittal for a minor site plan application from Everybody Balance Corp. To be located at 120 Turnpike Road, which, if you recall, that is previously where a parking garage was proposed by the prior owner, Curo Enterprises. The property has since been sold to Ferris Development, and this yoga facility was in Southborough already, but they found an opportunity to move into this location for their yoga studio. So on March 9th, we filed the minor site plan application with town clerk. And just to remind everybody that it's in front of the planning board because of the conflict in town code with the site plan review committee and members not being town residents and voting on town projects. So in the interim, while we're getting the site plan approval revised at the next town meeting coming up, this is in front of the planning board. It did not require a butter notification or advertise legal notice. It follows the same process with site plan review committee, but instead it's coming to the planning board. So
And
to
Karina,
recap, yeah,
just a point of clarification. You said it was at the site for the prior applicant wanted to put the garage, but they don't, Everybody Balance doesn't want to be where the garage was going to be. They want to be in the office building. Right.
that's correct. Sorry.
All right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I knew that, but for anyone listening, that it's not a new structure. They'd be looking to convert some of the office space for a yoga studio.
Absolutely, that's correct. So the minor site plan was filed with town clerk, starting the 30-day review time that the planning board has for action. On March 11th, the minor site plan application was distributed to all the departments who would usually be on the site plan review committee to give them opportunity to comment on this project where they typically would have in the past in the vote. On March 17th, the applicant was in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for two special permits, one for an indoor athletic facility in the Business Highway District and another for the multiple uses in that building, which was an office. It's an office building. So the building's about 80,000 square feet or more, and they are proposing changing out 1,700 and roughly 60 square feet of office space to a yoga facility. They submitted a floor plan showing where the yoga studio will be in the building, and then also a floor plan of what's being changed inside. Because as you know, they have to get a building permit to make those interior modifications. And all the changes are going to be inside the building, barring maybe a sign that gets added outside, whether there's an existing sign, kiosk, or something they add their name to. But it's all internal to the building. They're proposing 4 to 5 classes a day, 6 to 10 students per class. they provided parking calculations, and I'll let Brian speak to this more. I just wanted to help him a little bit because
So Karina, before we go too far though, I just want to, I know we talked briefly earlier, just for the other planning board members and even for Brian himself. The ask today, is it for us to actually vote to approve this, or is it just to discuss it? Because if we're going to vote, there's only 3 of us, and if there's any deviation or you know, then Brian might want more planning board members than just 3, correct?
yeah, and Brian's not elevated yet, Sarah? So we
Well,
can-
I just want to set a baseline for what's expected of us
Yeah,
at this
well,
point.
I think the hopes was that the planning board would vote on this because it's not a huge change. And they demonstrated that they have plenty of parking in the parking calcs based on 2 different ways of looking at it. They would add either 3 or 7 parking spaces to the requirement, and they have in excess in the 30 to 40 extra space range based on the calculations. The building commissioner also looked at. So the goal was to be a vote for them so that they could finalize and get their facility running. But it is true that you need a simple majority, 3 votes out of 5. So if any one of you vote against it, it would be denied. So
So having said that, I can say from my perspective, I'm comfortable moving forward and voting tonight. Are the other members comfortable moving forward and listening to the proposal and voting tonight? Okay, great. All right, can we promote Brian then, please?
So I did try to promote Mr. Morrison, but I got a failure error. So I'm not sure if that is something with the equipment that he's using.
here he is.
I'm gonna
There
try
he is.
again. Here we go. Good, great.
All of a sudden he disappeared. I was like, oh no. And then he popped up. Okay.
Perfect.
Whatever you did, it worked. So
Good, good.
this is the elusive Dr. Erdman who actually owns the studio.
Hi.
Hello.
And she also happens to be my wife, so I'm the designated permit filer, I guess.
Great,
He's the brains behind the operation. We're in good shape.
great. So can you tell, do you guys live in town? And then the reason why I asked is just normally we ask you where you're from and, you know,
Yeah, we actually live over in Hopkinton.
Hopkinton. Okay,
The studio was originally started back in 2007 in Southborough. Susan bought the studio in 2015 from the prior owner. It's something that she's always wanted to do. Unfortunately, she still works in at MIT, so this is kind of a juggling act. But we live
Where
in
was it
Hopkinton.
prior, Brian?
I'm sorry.
Where was the yoga studio before this change?
In 2 different locations. One was at 155 Boston Road in that office building that sits between the car wash and the gas station, and the other was at 162 Quarterville Road in the strip mall between Dunkin' Donuts and the bank. So neither of those were ideal for what we wanted to do. The opportunity arose because we were at the end of the lease of both of those to move to some other location. And Ryan O'Toole, I think, is also among the public here tonight. Ryan is representing the landlord if you have any questions for
Yes, he
them.
is.
okay.
And they were gracious enough to carve out some space in the building and give us the opportunity to set it up in a way that would be perfect for what the studio wants to do.
Sarah, can you bring up the map and show the public where we're looking in the space within the building, please?
Yes, I can. Give me one moment.
There's
If you
either
look-
the Alta survey, Sarah, or there's the
If you like, Sarah, I can share it, screen share it from here.
Sure, absolutely. I'm gonna, you should be all set to share. And then I'm just pulling it up from our Dropbox to back you up if you have any trouble.
Okay, so this was just the narrative summary of minor site plan submittal.
I love the logo, by the way.
Will it allow you to do it this way?
I'm not sure.
Need to try it?
It doesn't seem to want to.
I think the next page up in the top left corner is a little down page. Yeah,
I
there you
just
go.
hit that anyway.
Okay, there we go. So Karina mentioned the parking calculations. I'll do that and then I'll get to the map. With 10 students per class, the zoning code offers two different ways to calculate parking. It could be 3 or 7. I guess worst case it would be 10. But there's currently a spare or a surplus of more than 35 parking spaces in the serving the facility. This is the facility. You can see where Route 9 is here. 118 Turnpike is nearby but not associated. 120 is the building we're talking about, and these are the spaces that are allocated to 120 Turnpike. You would ask for a copy of the title survey, the land plan. This is very much an eye chart, but you have a copy of it there if there's any questions. The locus of where we're talking about is in again, this is the Route 9 side. This is one of the two entrances. There's an entrance on what I would call the front of the building, and again around at the rear of the building. The locus of the area that we're talking about, 1,760 more or less square feet, is right here in the front corner. This I'm going to skip over because this is a more detailed view. But basically, we're just turning it into one large open room of that 1,760 square feet. There'd be a door here and a door down here. Windows along the entire wall here.
So Brian, you have to go into the actual office building? Is that through the
Yeah,
main
you
lobby and
come
then?
in through the vestibule here, and there would be an access doorway right here that gets you into the facility.
And what is that what's the room you're going through? Is that a reception area?
Well,
or?
I don't think they've, and maybe Ryan can speak more to that. This currently, what's shown here is how the building was arranged previously before the current demolition and reconstruction is underway. So it's basically, it's a common area. There had been seating in that area previously. I don't think it's not pertinent to anybody's office area in particular.
Hi, guys. This is Ryan O'Toole here, if I may jump in.
Thanks, Ryan.
Hi, Ryan, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Ryan O'Toole. I'm here representing the landlord Ferris Development Group. I am an Oxford resident, just to give where I'm from. But yes, just to echo what Brian just said, the area where the cursor is currently shown is just going to be common area for tenants for ingress and egress out of that space.
Okay. And then, so I'm just thinking for emergency egress. There are two ways to get out of this location? One, like how would
So
they?
there's we're sort of still COVID planning as well. So we're trying to plan for, a route in and a route out. And then there's multiple ways to, through this space, there's access out to the rear part of the building, or this hallway provides access out this way. So there are multiple egresses from the space.
The windows, are they available to open enough to get people out of them if needed?
Ryan, I don't believe those are openable, are they?
Typically, no, those windows will not open.
Okay.
And again, yes, there, if you were to, I guess, zoom out from this plan to give you the entire first floor plate, you could exit from the south of the building. And again, this was put together by J. Frere Architects, who has confirmed that this is code compliant. So
Okay.
it meets both ingress and egress code.
And Andrew, they will have to get a building permit.
Yep. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
I think that's it in terms of the description of, what the space will be, where it's located. Again, the bigger view. The rest of the building, is my understanding, is going to continue to be, there's a cafe that's going in here, and everything else is going to be office space.
So Brian, I'm just curious, one of the things the planning board's always focused on is parking. Obviously, there's plenty of parking there. I know you said, is the current building occupied or being used as office space?
Hi guys, Ryan here. I can answer that one, Brian, if you don't mind. The building is currently occupied. There's one tenant on the third floor. That's about 18,000 square feet using round numbers. We have a prospective tenant for the second floor, but yes, the building is occupied by a third floor tenant. And, the rest of the occupants of the building outside of Everybody Balance will be office.
So then, I'm thinking part of your business plan, Brian, and a significant other would be that you might be able to leverage some of the existing tenants to come down during the day and relax a little bit, probably, so you don't even need all the parking spots.
That would certainly be the hope, yes.
Okay, so I mean, so for my part, parking concerns are addressed, and thank you. Any
Is there a
other?
sign? Can I just ask, are you proposing a sign?
Other than what signage would be allowed out by on the board out near the street, we've not talked with Ryan about any other signage.
And that would
Sure.
also, if it wasn't compliant, it has to go through the building department as well.
Okay, good to know.
Our plan would be to install basic, monument signage and directional signage so that it could be clear for patrons. They know where Everybody Balance is. And then as you enter the building as well, there will be a directory.
Great. Mimi, any questions?
I have no questions.
Ms. Houlihan, any questions?
No, I just want to say to Susan, thank you. I compliment you for keeping it's been hard in COVID for athletic facilities. So thanks for doing your part and trying to make it work and keeping your business in Southborough. So thank you very much. It's nice that you found another space. So I have no questions.
It's nice to hear that because we did work very hard and it seems like the customers so far really appreciate the efforts and we're doing our best to hang in there. So thank you.
Yeah, great. I echo Ms. Houlihan's comments, and I know my wife has a lot of friends who go, so it's great that you're still open, and it helps a lot of it helps a lot of marriages with their sanity, I think.
Helps ours too.
So with that, if there aren't any, are there any questions from the public? I don't see any hands being raised. So Karina, help me with the wording that we were looking for a motion here.
Sure. It's going to be a motion to approve the minor site plan application for Everybody Balance at 120 Turnpike Road as presented.
Okay, Mimi,
So moved.
Second.
any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's go to vote. Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Great, congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Let me just point out that I'll prepare a decision letter that represents tonight's vote and information, and then I'll submit that to you and also to the town clerk for public record.
Okay, excellent.
All right.
So
Right.
at this point, then, the Ferris Development folks can go ahead and file for a building permit. They have to wait for that to be issued before we can file for the
Yes.
building permit.
You may be able to file for the permit. I just have to check the guidelines on, we don't do very many minor site plans, so I just need to double check, and I'll follow up with you tomorrow if it's
Okay.
different. If there's an appeal period or not, and if there is, it's 20 days.
Okay.
If not, I'll draft that letter very quickly and give a copy to the building commissioner as well.
Thank you
Probably
very
the
much,
upload.
folks.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks
Thank
again
you.
and best of luck. I'm sure
Thank
my
you.
wife is
Good
gonna
night.
stop by
Thank you.
soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Doesn't the appeal go to the planning board for minor, Karina?
I think it does, yeah.
It may, yeah. I think you're probably right. I'm just not super, I'm just trying to read it real quickly. I'll check it out, but either way, we'll do the right thing.
Great. All right, so let's see, next was the other business before the board, the planner's report. Karina, I know you already went through it, but in case
Yes.
anything else came up, was there any other items that you found on the floor there that you wanted to discuss?
It's all like my taxes over there. No, I don't have anything else. I just want to point, we do have the meeting minutes from the last meeting and also the vote potentially for executive session, which wouldn't be discussed. It would just be a vote on format, not release. But you may want to hold that to the next meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna get to those next, but you
Okay,
jumped to
sorry.
it. I was gonna suggest we hold those until we had a full board or at least on board. Because I don't think there's any delay or any problems with delaying that till our next meeting on April 12th. If everyone's good with that.
Mhm.
I see heads nodding. Okay. Other than that, are any comments from the public or questions from the public?
I don't see any hands raised. We are down to 4 attendees.
The final countdown.
Seeing no other business or questions coming in, is there a motion, Ms. Luttrell?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Mills, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Thank you. That'll adjourn for this evening. Thanks,
Andrew,
everyone. Appreciate
you're
it.
a great acting chair.
Yeah.
Well
great
done.